we are back again with another Risk Insurance Dialogues interview. Today we have Hector Cano, and he is the Vice President of Workers' Compensation Claims at Winston Crum Insurance. So thank you so much, Hector, for joining us today.
No, thank you for the opportunity, Katie. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So to kick things off, can you just give me a little summary of your current role and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Hector Cano, the Vice President of Workers' Compensation Claims here at Winston Crum Insurance Company. My role is essentially to provide oversight. We are an outsourced claims handling model for workers' comp claims. We use third-party administrators to handle our claims when they come in. My job is just to look at claims from a high level status, just making sure that they are reserved appropriately, that the investigations are being conducted in a timely manner. We deal with a decent amount of catastrophic injuries just because of the nature of our business. We do a lot of construction. So I've been in the industry now for 26 years. I come from a long history of adjusting claims from different levels. I had the opportunity to handle a lot of catastrophic claims throughout my career and held various leadership roles on the other side, from the handling entity side. So now that I'm here on the carrier side, I get to oversee that program. I have a great team that reports to me as well. So essentially, that's what we do. Just making sure that everything is going good, reporting claims up to our reinsurers, and making sure that I'm reporting it up to our management here, and just keeping a close eye on our book of business.
Absolutely. And I know we had talked a lot about your journey throughout your career and, this constant need to get better and move on to the next thing and grow your network. So can you talk a little bit about what that mindset looks like to you and how you keep that drive alive after these years?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to me, staying hungry is basically just never settling, right? No matter how long you've been in the business, you got to be, curiosity, adaptability. I remind myself that our industry is just constantly evolving. There's new legislation that comes into play. You have all different jurisdictions. Everybody has rules and regulations. Technology makes a big play in it as well. There's not one company that I talk to right now that does not mention AI. So that's just something that's going to be a major role, a major game changer essentially in the workplace. I'm a competitive person by nature. Grew up playing sports, but I like to compete with myself. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm like, I'm better than that person or better than that person. I just want to kind of be better than myself, right? Compare myself to how I was last month, how I was last year. So I'm always looking at creative ways of figuring out what I need to do in order to achieve the next level, achieve the next step. What keeps that drive alive? I mean, it's just essentially goal setting. Every successful company has goals that they set. That's something that I've always, achieved. That I've looked at myself. Look at yourself. Ask yourself that question. Where do you see yourself in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years? And once you have that long-term goal, you can set those short-term goals that should coincide. It could be like stepping stones. But then also you got to make sure you hold yourself accountable. If it's a goal that you did not achieve, you got to ask yourself some of those questions. What did I do wrong? What is there something I could have done to achieve that goal? So those are some of the things that I do personally, as far as like to stay hungry and just keep that drive into play.
Can you share a little bit about now how mentors have kind of influenced your career and how you pay that forward with others in the industry, all these new professionals coming in? I know you're involved in a lot of different organizations. How have mentors and mentorship really affected your career?
I think that mentorship is very important. I mean, ever since beginning of time, all of us have had mentors, right? From the time that you got your parents, your mom, dad, brothers, family, friends, all the way up through the professional career. My dad was a big mentor of mine, in my personal life, and even in my career. It's funny because you start, talking to people once you're in the industry, and what you really find out is that sometimes your best mentors are people that can motivate you. So I remember there being a time where it was like my dad knew me so well that he knew exactly what buttons to push to motivate me into achieving certain things in life. So sometimes mentors don't even have to be in the industry that we're currently in. It's just that finding that correct person that can motivate you in the right direction and point you in the right direction, and that they truly have their best interest in you. But I've had tons of mentors throughout my career. It's funny because I even think about it now, and it's some people may not have even realized that they were my mentors. There's sometimes that you can talk to somebody and you see that somebody is very successful in what they do and they've achieved a lot in their career, and sometimes it's up to you to ask questions and ask certain things. So sometimes they're guiding you without that formal title of being your mentor. And then I've also obviously been blessed enough to have mentors throughout my career with prior employers and with organizations that I currently work in. The giving back part is a big thing to me. I'm an ambassador with Rise Professionals. So if you're ever that person that is more on the shy side and don't want to maybe tap that person on the shoulder and ask for advice, I highly encourage you. You can go to riseprofessionals.com and it's free. You sign up for a mentorship program. They're currently they do one all year round. So you can figure out when they stop and when they start. Mentorship is a big part of your career and a big part of your life. And it's something that I highly encourage you doing. I've learned something from every single boss that I've had, and including my current boss right now. A lot of times it's just by listening and to the things that they say, or just by asking questions when any opportunity arises or you get that one-on-one time with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's mentorship is just so crucial. And I love that you brought up Rise. It's a great organization, and there's so many different ways to start these conversations with people to get new mentors or to just have a conversation. So I think that's a great point as well, to just kind of step outside your comfort zone and ask that person if you can, or join an organization. And with regards to, building those connections, how do you approach kind of building genuine connections that'll actually lead to long-term either professional growth or opportunities in insurance, as opposed to kind of just like a one and done conversation with someone? How do you really build genuine connections with people in the industry?
Sure. I love this question. It seems like an easy answer, and sometimes you'd be surprised how many people don't realize it. But the answer is within the question in itself. How do you build a genuine relationship? You got to be genuine yourself. You have to be authentic, and most importantly, just be kind. It's funny. We have a golf tournament that we do annually, and it's the Frank Crum Invitational, and it's a very important golf tournament. A lot of people love to attend. We sold out in like a week and a half this year, but Frank gets an opportunity to speak at this tournament the night before, and one of the things that he said years ago kind of stuck with me. And our tournament gives back to homeless, Feeding Tampa Bay, so all of our proceeds go to that. But one of the things that he said that stuck with me was, and I'm probably not going to say it exactly how he said it, but it was something to the effect of, if you can help someone that can never pay you back, And at first I just kind of like associated it with like some, helping, feeding people and all of that stuff. But when you shift the perspective into making it seem like it's like, what? I'm just going to be kind and help people, even throughout my career, without the expectation of receiving anything in return. And when you take that out of it, it turns you into a completely different person, because you're no longer going to get upset that if you do something for somebody, you're expecting them to do it right back for you. And that's how you build connections. And I'll tell you a little quick personal story. So when my daughter was in middle school, she had a friend that she always talked about. We had an opportunity to go to this school, and it was like a meeting, and all the parents were there, and we got to meet her friend's parents, and they were from Pennsylvania. And this is the very first time that we met them, handshake, meeting them, and they mentioned that they were moving that weekend, and my wife quickly jumped in and was like, "Oh, Hector has a truck, he can help you move, on Saturday." And I was like, "Okay," but she knew that, that ever since then, we've been great friends. They ended up moving back to Pennsylvania, but I'm going on a cruise the Thanksgiving weekend, and we take vacations together. And I just think and reflect back on it, and like, what if I would have never helped? It could have just been that meet and greet, never talk to them again. But sometimes just being kind, and that's the same way it works in the industry, right? So when you do kind things for people, you develop these relationships. These people that you can now say, I've known for 20 years, for 25 years, I've known for 15 years, and they've become an important group of you, and there's trust there. They know that they can call you and ask you a question without any kind of judgment, and they know that you're going to give them the best advice that you can. And that's how you build genuine connections, which are super important in this industry. Just because, at any given time, I can pick up the phone and call somebody at a different company, and somebody that I completely trust and know that they've known me and they're genuine as well, and they have that same ambition. So that's my take on that.
I love that response too, because so many people think that a connection that you build has to be, you're giving them something and they're giving you something back. But just to build that connection, and even if it is one-sided at first, it might not always be one-sided, and you never know where the connection's going to grow to. So I think that's a really great point, and I love that story. Within a big company, there's many different departments, and we had earlier kind of discussed the importance of communication between those departments. As someone who has oversight over a department at your company, how do you see the collaboration between these departments growing, and what do you think works well and what doesn't, since they're, kind of differing areas, say like underwriting and claims, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it first starts off with, everybody has their responsibilities within their departments. And it's very easy to just go ahead and get into that tunnel vision and just start doing things the way your department does them, and not having that communication. So one of the biggest shifts that I've seen is when teams start speaking the common language, right? And it's not, for example, claims versus underwriting, but having that one mission to reduce cost, right? You can find something that you have in common and a goal that you're both trying to achieve. And then you start having those conversations on what can you do to achieve that goal and that success. And then throughout that, you could also start having those discussions with various departments about their pain points, right? You can sit there and, and explain your pain points. There's been times in the past where we've been able to identify that it's like, oh, this report is very time consuming. And then you find out that other department does that same report. And now you're duplicating that work, but without that communication, you would have never known. And so that's something that automatically just streamlines that, makes it easier and more efficient. Now you're both just focusing on one report and working off of that and building off of that. So that communication skill is super important. So, I think it's one of those things that you don't realize that, it's very easy to just stay within your department and not have that. You don't want to set unnecessary meetings, but you want to set effective meetings. So we have these meetings sometimes on a monthly basis. One of the things that we started doing internally is just making sure that you have an agenda. When somebody sets up a meeting, because nowadays it's just, with Teams and everything else, it's like next thing you know, your calendar's filled up and you have meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And then you're constantly just focusing on next thing you know, you're in all these meetings talking about all the work that you should be doing. And then when you get off, you're going into another meeting, and then you realize that you run out of time. So having an agenda has become super important. So if I'm setting a meeting with you, I can now send you a short agenda of the topics that we're going to talk about, and it holds both of us accountable. It holds us accountable to now a time frame where it's like, okay, we got 30 minutes to talk about these 4 items. So we probably don't have a lot of time to talk about the weekend or whatever the case may be. That might take, a lot of time. We can, figure that out on the side. But agendas are very valuable as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of with regards to, setting that agenda and being effective, how can, newer insurance professionals kind of strengthen those communication skills, not only within their organizations to build, trust and build connections, but kind of outside of just their single organization within the industry as a whole?
I say that if somebody coming in new into the industry, you got to come in with an open mind and try to go to as many things as possible. Whether that be conferences, anything that's nearby, try to join webinars, try to identify your weaknesses. With technology, there's so many things out there right now. There's so many apps now that can even help you with communication with, if you're somebody that has, you're not confident in the way that you communicate. I downloaded one recently where it was talking about, focusing on communication, and it was more so when you're in a room full of people, right? And a room full of people that you've never met before, and you have that awkward silence, right? And everybody's just sitting there, and you look around the room, and the first thing that people do sometimes is pull out their phone and just make pretend that they're busy or whatever the case is, because they're avoiding that contact, and they're afraid of that small talk, and this thing was just basically talking about, like, instead of asking, like, oh, did you have a good weekend, and people are like, yep, it was good, how was yours? Okay, yeah, it was good. Just shifting that and changing your perspective to asking, like, what was the best part of your weekend? Because now it makes that person think and tell you a story, which can develop into a conversation. So there's so many little things like that you have at your fingertips, and you're not going to be able to do that until you start identifying what your weaknesses are, whether that's either public speaking or communicating, but just constantly looking at ways, if you're starting out in the industry, depending on what role you're in, also talking to the people of, like, if this is what I want to achieve, what do I need to do to get there? There's a lot of programs out there with the institutes and stuff like that that have various designations, things that you can do to better yourself and just give you that separation from your peers, that you can, focus on and obtain certain designations that can posture you to be a good candidate or a good consideration for the next time a promotion comes around. But it's developing your network and just, going out there, putting yourself out there, meeting people, um, and asking a lot of questions. Finding people that have achieved success in this industry and asking questions what they did to get there. When you talk to people that, if somebody's good at something, and what I have found is that they're passionate about it and they want to tell you, they're going to give you their playbook. They're going to sit there and say, oh, these are the things that I did. There's not too many people that are going to turn you away, and say, no, I don't want to talk to you. So anytime that I've ever identified somebody and I've given them the respect of saying, like, hey, I really, think that you've done a great job and you've succeeded in so many things, how do I get there? How do I do that? They've been very open-minded and have provided a bunch of valuable feedback for me. So, you got to get yourself out there.
Yeah, and that is the nice thing about our industry is people in general are very nice and very willing to help. So that's also, gives you that advantage of I haven't same as you, I haven't had anyone that I've reached out to that said no, I don't want anything to do with you to have a conversation. So that's also something great about this industry. So my last question for you is if you could give any piece of advice to a new professional coming into the industry, what would it be?
Yeah. And what I would tell people is don't be scared. Because there's a lot of times when I, talk to young professionals, and, they start at a certain level, depending on, again, where they're at. Maybe they're an assistant, and maybe their next step is to be an adjuster, or maybe they're already an adjuster and their next step is to be a legal adjuster or a lost time adjuster. And I see people constantly pass up opportunities because of the fear of failing. And I say that, it's okay to fail, but take that step, because when you pass up opportunities and you don't go for things, next thing you know, 2, 3 years goes by and maybe that opportunity doesn't come back up. And now you've stayed stagnant. So you got to be, like, fearless, to a sense, but also have the responsibility that when you're given an opportunity, you're given it 100%, right? You have to have that hard work and dedication. You have to have, like, that Kobe method kind of thing or whatever, where you see if, like, okay, if this person trains X amount of days a week, you got to put in some extra work. So you can't have, laziness cannot be part of your vocabulary. It's something that, when you set your mind to something, you got to stick to it. You got to achieve that thing, and just take it one day at a time. But more importantly, just constantly ask yourself those questions. Where do I see myself in the next couple of years? And it's okay if it's in that same position. There's some people that I've met through the industry and they've been in the same position throughout their whole career, and they're okay with that. That's fine. And then there's others that really want to improve and do different things. And those are the people that I'm talking about, where you got to get yourself out there. Don't be scared to get that next promotion because you don't really know about it. There's a lot of resources nowadays with technology at our fingertips. There's tons of things that you can do, including stuff like going back to, like, the AI that I was telling you about earlier. It's like every single person is talking about AI, and I can tell you that the next time I have a little bit of time, because I do tend to sign up for like a lot of things at a time too. But when I have more time and I'm done with this designation that I'm working on, the first thing I'm going to do is look for a class to to learn about AI. I've seen so many different things out there that say if you're only using ChatGPT, you're way behind because there's 40 other platforms out there. Um, so that's something that always I think I have like a little fear of that. One day I'm gonna have to like call one of my kids and help me turn on the TV or something. So it's a responsibility that I owe myself to keep up with technology, just because I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that falls extremely behind and now I don't know how to operate a TV, or I don't know how to operate my phone, or whatever the case may be. So all of us have to do our due diligence and that continuing education part of it, especially if you're in our industry. Again, circling back to, laws change, things change, technology changes, workplace dynamics change. So you owe it to yourself to be responsible enough. And if you want to succeed in your career, you're going to have to do that continuing education piece of it. So,
Yeah,
relentless effort.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That is, as much education as you can get is always helpful, especially in this industry, like you said, where things are constantly changing, growing. There's all kinds of new stuff coming out all the time. So definitely best to stay ahead of it. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, of
This
course.
was a great conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Katie. Thank you so much for having me, and wish you the best.